Hello YouTube, welcome back to my driveway and welcome to the new project. This is a 1984 Honda Goldwing Aspencade. It's got right around or just over 86,000 miles on it. It's got a flat 4 1200cc engine mated to a 5-speed transmission, shaft drive. There's a good number of things that I've got to go over on it, which is nothing you wouldn't expect from a motorcycle from 1984. There are two things that are on the top of the list. Number one is the tires these are Metzler Marathons, which are actually pretty good tires, but they're bald as can be. So I got new Shinko Tourmasters to put on. And then the second thing on the list, the rear air suspension leaks. You'll pump it up and then, 10 minutes later, a couple miles down the road, it's all leaked out, and you can actually hear it when you do pump it up. So, yeah, there's plenty of other things that are wrong with it. For example, this is what the throttle looks like. So that's obviously got to be fixed. The clutch could probably be bled, as well as, you got that sound going on. But, yeah, functionally speaking, everything is in working order. Alright, so I'm back in the garage. It's just a little hot outside. I didn't want to be out in the sun, but anyway, the goal for today is to get the wheels off, because I want to mount the new tires, and here they are. I got this with the bike. The guy threw it in. It's a Shinko Tourmaster, and then I got this, the rear to match. So I want to get the wheels off and get these out of here ASAP so that I can get them back as soon as possible. So the goal is to remove the saddlebags. I'm going to be using the Haynes manual. I just think that's the best way to both learn and to make sure you're doing things right. But anyway, the first step is to remove this rear reflector. There's two wing nuts, one right here and here. On either side, you just want to reach back here and remove those by hand. And once you do that, it should just pop right out. I learned that I only had one holding on, so I'm just going to throw that in the bag to take to the hardware store. But once you take off the reflector, there's two Phillips here on either side, and that's the next step. Take those out. So once you've got those two screws removed, you come into the main saddlebag, and there's two screws on the bottom and two on the side. And once you've removed those, according to the book, it should just kind of come loose. And what you're going to want to do is follow the wiring harness, because obviously the brake lights are attached and the indicators. Follow the harness to the connector, unclip it, and then the saddlebag should come right off. Yeah, so like it said, you just gotta remove the bolts, and it comes loose, and the wiring harness just runs right up here to this connector. You just gotta yank on it a little bit, and it comes right off. Again, I learned that I had two different kinds of hardware going on, so I'll throw those in the same bag to take with me. So here's what the hardware looks like. That was holding on my two saddlebags, not the stock ones, I don't think. I might or might not just go get new hardware that's all the same. The nuts were also different. I think I'm going to remove the seat just so I have some better access, and the way you're going to want to do that is there's an Allen bolt on either side. You're just going to remove that and slide the seat back and up, and it should come right out. I'm actually going to remove the trunk because I can't slide the seat back enough, so I believe that should just be these four, and it should just pop right off. So make sure you don't forget your brake light connection, which it's right here on the right hand side of the bike. And once you've removed the harness there's also a zip tie in there, you should be able to just lift. There we go. Lift the top case right off, and then you're left with a naked Goldwing. Okay, so I got the seat off. It was a little bit tough because the mounting bracket in the front is a little more complicated than some other bikes, and according to the book, it just says lift up at the back of the seat and pull it rearward to disengage the hook at the front from the fuel tank. But there's a little cheat. I don't know if this is all bikes or just mine, but if you actually go into the gas filler cap, you can access that bracket, and that makes it, able to come off. I couldn't get it off without doing that, and then I just thought maybe I can reach in there, and I could. Anyway, the seat is off, and now it's a little dirty, so I might try and wipe some stuff down, get it a little cleaner so I'm not just getting my hands all dirty. And so the last thing you want to do to complete the rear end disassembly is remove this fender section, and that's held on by just this one Phillips screw. And once you've got that out, just slide it backwards, and there you go. And here's a better view at my horribly bald tire. So it's the next day, and last night I just rolled it out, gave it a light wash. I didn't get a whole lot off, to be honest. A lot of the stuff is really kind of baked on there. But anyway, for removing the wheel, next step is to remove your axle nut. This is a 27mm. You'll need a short socket to get to it. Then after that, you want to remove your two lower shock mount bolts from the swing arm, and then loosen the axle pinch bolt. So this side it's a 14mm, the other side is a 12, and then the axle pinch bolt is also a 12. But once you've got those three out, the next step is to drop the swing arm so that you could roll the tire out, basically. But that's a little hard to do if you've got the front tire on, so I think I'm gonna jump up there and remove it first. So up in the front here, once you've got the bike jacked up and the front wheel off the ground, the first thing you're gonna want to do is, on Aspencades you have a speed sensor, and on the other bikes you have a speedo cable. But the first thing is you're gonna want to note where the wire goes and then remove it. And according to the book, the wire is supposed to come up and over the anti-dive and follow up here, but mine actually goes under the caliper, so that's one thing that I'm going to fix before I put it back together. So once you have the speedo unit free, you are going to want to remove these two, which are 12mm, and then remove the bracket with it, like that, and then loosen this guy, the caliper pivot bolt, which is a 14. So you actually want to remove the pivot bolt, and then the caliper just kind of swings free, and you want to support it somewhere. I just wrapped it around my mirror, and then just as a precaution I put just some wooden shims in between so that the caliper pistons don't compress. But anyway, now the next step is to do the exact same thing on the other side. The next step is going to be these two nuts under here. They're 14mm. Just back those off, and then the end caps will come right off, and then the wheel should come right out. So according to the book, the last step in removing the wheel is just to take off the axle holder guys, these things, from either side, and then the wheel should just drop out and roll away. However, my caliper brackets, which mount here, they were getting in the way of the tire, and I'm not sure if that's just this tire, the Metzler Marathon. I don't know if, you know, the aspect ratio of this tire specifically is what disallowed that, but this tire would not come out unless I removed those, the two brackets from either side. So that's what I did. I just removed them, and it was just one Allen bolt. So yeah, that's the front tire removed. Now I should be able to let the front down and get back on the rear. Alright, so we're back in the rear here, and I removed the racks just because they were kind of getting in the way, and I was not able to remove the shocks with them on. So I removed them, and the shocks, I took them off from the top. Even though it doesn't say you need to, I was having a hard time doing it with. So anyway, I've got the shocks on both sides, completely removed. I might, or rather I probably will, take them off the rest of the way because they might need a rebuild. Because, like I said, the air suspension thing going on. But anyway, now you have access. I've jacked it up. I've jacked up the rear wheel. And I have access to the axle, and I'm just gonna, walk it out basically, and then the wheel should come right out. Okay, so once you've got the axle out, you'll have two of these guys. One's facing this way, and then there's the brake caliper bracket, and then there's this other one that will come out. And while not strictly necessary to remove the brake caliper bracket, I did, because my brakes are very, very worn, and the brake pads were actually like gripping onto the wheel, or gripping onto the disc. You can just about see how little material is left on this pad. This pad is better, but still not great, so looks like I have to do the brakes too, which I'm not exactly complaining about. But yeah, these are super, super worn. There's like not only is the actual braking surface very ridgy, but on the outside and the inside there's a very clear ridge. It's really not good. So anyway, once you've got the axle out and you've got the brakes out of the way, you should be able to just wiggle it free from the drive over there and basically wheel it backwards and out. Okay, so it's a new day. I didn't record removing the rear wheel, but basically here they are, both of them. After I removed them, I gave them a clean, and I think they look a good deal better. I still have to do this side of the front, but here they are. So this is the front, this is the old new tire mounted, and then here's the rear with the new tire. Again, these are Shinko Tourmasters. I also cleaned the rim. I have to clean the inside here. I have to re-grease that area. I also cleaned the final drive surface here. This is new grease already. But the thing is, I can't put the wheel back on yet because I'm waiting on a new rear brake rotor. Here's the old one, and aside from being just very dirty, you might not be able to tell on video, but there's a pretty serious lip going on either side. The minimum spec for the rear disc is supposed to be 6mm, but in the actual meat of the rotor, it's about 5.1, so that's obviously below spec, and I want to get that replaced. So I ordered one on eBay. Unfortunately, they don't make these anymore, obviously, so the options are either find a used OEM one or get a new one, and I opted to test out a new one. And by new, I don't mean like a new OEM, I mean like a new aftermarket. It looks a little bit different. I'll maybe put a picture on screen, but so yeah, I'm waiting on this to go back on, and since the rear wheel has to go on first, I'm also not able to put the front on, so we're just kind of in a waiting stage, and in the meantime I'm just going to clean all the parts. I'm cleaning the front rotors, which I'm not going to replace because they seem okay. I mean, there's not as much of a spec, and there's not as much of a lip, and they are within spec, so I'm just going to finish cleaning these up and basically put them back onto the wheel. Also, I'm not going to replace the pads in the front because they have a ton of meat left on them. However, in the rear, I have new EBC Organic. The number is FA69 because, again, I'm not so sure if you'll be able to see that, but the pads have really like no more material left on. Alright, so it's a bunch of days later, and I'm not exactly sure where we left off, but basically the front wheel, it was leaking from the bead, it was leaking air, so I had to obviously send it back to the place that they mounted it. Turns out there's just a bit of corrosion on one part, so that put me back another couple days that I wasn't working on it, but that also let me wait for some parts to come in. So now I have the rear brake disc. So if you remember, I was saying how you can't really get an OEM piece. This is the one that I took off, which is way under spec, so I have to replace it. And basically the options are to find one that's used but still within spec, or to buy one of these new ones. And it seems like no matter where you get it, they're all kind of the same. The same price, same item, same everything. So yeah, here it is. It looks pretty good. It's a little bit lighter. Not that that is really going to make a huge difference. So now that the disc is here, I can mount up the rear wheel. I'm going to mount the disc to the wheel. I've cleaned up the axle. I have to re-grease it and all the parts that go on it, and then I can put on the new brake pads that I have. And yeah, let's get into that. So the first step is going to be just getting the actual disc onto the wheel, and you're going to want to just use some steel wool or a wire wheel or wire brush to clean up these studs, make sure the threads are clean, and then get the disc on and tighten up these bolts these nuts to 22 foot-pounds. Alright, so once you've got the disc on, I use some blue Loctite, just because obviously you don't want that coming off anytime soon. Plus, don't forget to use brake clean on the braking surface, just because you don't know if there's oil or dirt or anything from shipping. But then the next step for me is I took this bezel, this plastic guy, off just to clean it because it was quite dirty. So the next thing is just I'm going to put that back on. You just kind of place it on and then give it a twist and it locks in place, and then there's one bolt that holds it in place. After that, you're going to want to, if you haven't already, take the final drive, I guess this is the drive plate, give it a clean up, and then put some Honda Moly 60 or equivalent grease on the splines. Honda Moly 60 isn't made anymore, so I'm using this stuff, SDP Moly EP grease. Just something with high molybdenum count, and then you can roll the wheel under the swing arm. So once you've got the drive plate installed, you're going to want to come back to the bike, and there's a spacer here. If you removed it to clean it, just give that a nice coat of multi-purpose grease. I'm using this stuff, Shell Rotella multi-purpose lithium. Just get that in there with some nice grease on it, and then you can roll the wheel in. And then once the wheel is in on the brake side, so on this side of the bike, you're going to have one of these spacers. Just give it also a nice little coat of multi-purpose grease, mostly on the inside. You don't have to worry about the outside too much. Just this front lip, the non-flanged side, and then you're just going to kind of plop that right into the bearing. So once you're at this point being the wheel connected on the drive side, this bushing in and everything lifted up so that you have clearance from the exhaust through the axle, what you're going to want to do is take your axle, get it greased up, take your brake plate, and you're just going to basically line up all the holes and slide the axle back in just as you removed it. Alright, so once everything here is in, you're going to want to torque down the axle pinch bolt. This goes down to 20 foot-pounds, and then on the other side, you're going to want to put in the axle nut, which goes down to 69 foot-pounds. So once those are both nice and tight, the next thing up for me is to replace the brake pads, and the first thing you're going to want to do is remove this bracket, which holds in these retaining pins, and that's just a 10 mil right here, and that comes right off. And then I've already pushed the pins through a little bit, and once you remove them all the way, the two pads will fall right out. I had to compress the pistons in pretty far because, like I said a million times, my rotor was super worn, and my pads, I mean both of the old pads, are just about as thick as one of the new pads, so these pistons were out very, very far. So I had to compress them. I just used C-clamps because I don't have one of those compressor tools, but it's fine. I just used the old ones. I put them in there and then I tightened 2 C-clamps down on either side, and that went smoothly. So then I just cleaned out the inside, and I'm about to apply some brake clean, or sorry, not brake clean, anti-seize to the moving parts. So that is those clips there, and then also there's a clip here on the top of this caliper bracket. I'm just going to apply just a tiny little bit there, and then install the new pads. Also the pins I removed, and same thing, I'm going to give them some anti-seize. So that was a bit of a struggle. You shouldn't really use a whole lot of anti-seize because you don't need that much, and also it just gets everywhere, and I kind of ran into that. I thought I was using a small amount, but you can always use less. So anyway, once that's on, once the pads are in, you're just going to want to torque down these 2 bolts. The pivot bolt goes down to 20 foot-pounds, and the mounting bolt goes down to 17. So once your caliper is torqued, your next step would be to install your air shock. However, I'm not going to do that yet because I ordered new oil seals for them, and I'm going to be rebuilding them and replacing the oil and stuff because, like I said, I'm hunting down the leak in the rear air suspension. I'm losing pressure over time, so yeah, I'm waiting on the parts to come for that. I'll do that in another episode. So then the next thing is going to be the front wheel. I also just wanted to show you what the rear pads look like. Here's the better one. That's maybe an 1/8 inch of material. At least it's kind of consistent around, but you could see how it's kind of it has a lip on this side, and then here's the worst one. I mean, that's maybe a 1/16, if, and on this edge it's actually eating into the, or it was actually eating into the backing plate, and it's not as consistent as the first one. But yeah, it's a good thing that I'm replacing those. So actually I think I'm going to do the front in the next episode, just because I think this one might be getting a little bit long, plus I haven't put out a video in a little while, and I just want to get one out. Yeah, so to recap, in this video we got both wheels off, got new tires mounted, got all the brakes off, just to clean them up, and I got the rear brakes renewed with a new disc and new pads. In the next video, I'll finish refreshing the front. I'm going to mount the discs to the wheel, just clean up the pads, make sure they're not oily or greasy or anything. I also got a new clutch lever because the bushing was worn on the stock one. I have no reason to believe that that was never replaced, so that bushing is 86,000 miles old, and it kind of shows. So that's all in the next video. And yeah, so if you enjoyed watching, if you learned something, if this was helpful in any way, please like, comment, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next one, where we'll keep on working on the wing. See ya.